Hello everyone. These videos you're about to see are for students on the Winchester University MA programme in Reconciliation, the Theories and Dynamics of Reconciliation module. Look at these videos critically. In particular, look at the various criteria that we've discussed in the class and which are up on the Learning Network, and come to a judgment about how effective and sincere you think these public apologies are. What are the issues with their authority and impact? Okay, enjoy them. Thank you.
I move that today we honour the Indigenous peoples of this land, the oldest continuing cultures in human history. We reflect on their past mistreatment. We reflect in particular on the mistreatment of those who were stolen generations, this blemished chapter in our national history. The time has now come for the nation to turn a new page in Australia's history by righting the wrongs of the past and so moving forward with confidence to the future. We apologise for the laws and policies of successive parliaments and governments that have inflicted profound grief, suffering and loss on these our fellow Australians. We apologise especially for the removal of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children from their families, their communities and their country, for the pain, suffering and hurt of these stolen generations, their descendants and for their families left behind, we say sorry. To the mothers and the fathers, the brothers and the sisters, for the breaking up of families and communities, we say sorry. And for the indignity and degradation thus inflicted on a proud people and a proud culture, we say sorry. We, the Parliament of Australia, respectfully request that this apology be received in the spirit in which it is offered, as part of the healing of the nation. For the future, we take heart, resolving that this new page in the history of our great continent can now be written. We today take this first step by acknowledging the past and laying claim to a future that embraces all Australians. A future where this Parliament resolves that the injustices of the past must never, never happen again. A future where we harness the determination of all Australians, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, to close the gap that lies between us and life expectancy, educational achievement and economic opportunity. A future where we embrace the possibility of new solutions to enduring problems where old approaches have failed. A future based on mutual respect, mutual resolve and mutual responsibility. A future where all Australians, whatever their origins, are truly equal partners with equal opportunities and with an equal stake in shaping the next chapter in the history of this great country, Australia.
On bended knee, Serbian President Tomislav Nikolic has made a surprising apology for the Srebrenica massacre committed by Serbian forces in 1995. The admission comes just 2 days after Bosnian Muslim leader Bakir Izetbegovic visited Belgrade. He had recently urged Nikolic to recognise Srebrenica as genocide.
8.000 ubijenih ljudi.
In extracts posted online of an interview for Bosnian TV, the Serbian leader said he was kneeling for forgiveness, but stopped short of uttering the word genocide. A former member of the ultra-nationalist Serbian Radical Party, Nikolic provoked fury in Bosnia for declaring there was no genocide in Srebrenica during an interview just after his inauguration last June. Relatives of the 8,000 Bosnian Muslims killed during the massacre are not convinced of Nikolić's sincerity. Munira Subasic, president of the Mothers of Srebrenica Association, has said that kneeling is not enough. He must define the crime, as international courts do, as genocide.
I am deeply patriotic. I never want to believe anything bad about our country. I never want to call into question the behaviour of our soldiers and our army, who I believe to be the finest in the world. And I've seen for myself the very difficult and dangerous circumstances in which we ask our soldiers to serve. But the conclusions of this report are absolutely clear. There is no doubt. There is nothing equivocal. There are no ambiguities. What happened on Bloody Sunday was both unjustified and unjustifiable. It was wrong. Lord Savile concludes that the soldiers of the support company who went into the bogside did so as a result of an order which should not have been given by their commander. He finds that on balance the first shot in the vicinity of the march was fired by the British Army. He finds that none of the casualties shot by the soldiers of support company was armed with a firearm. He finds that there was some firing by Republican paramilitaries, but none of this firing provided any justification for the shooting of civilian casualties. And he finds that in no case was any warning given by soldiers before opening fire. He also finds that support company reacted by losing their self-control, forgetting or ignoring their instructions and training, and with a serious and widespread loss of fire discipline. He finds that despite the contrary evidence given by the soldiers, none of them fired in response to attacks or threatened attacks by nail or petrol bombers. And he finds that many of the soldiers, and I quote, knowingly put forward false accounts in order to seek to justify their firing. What's more, Lord Savile says that some of those killed or injured were clearly fleeing or going to the assistance of others who were dying. The report refers to one person who was shot while crawling away from the soldiers. Another was shot, in all probability, when he was lying mortally wounded on the ground. And the report refers to the father who was hit and injured by army gunfire after he had gone to tend to his son. For those looking for statements of innocence, Savile says, the immediate responsibility for the deaths and injuries on Bloody Sunday lies with those members of support company whose unjustifiable firing was the cause of those deaths and injuries. And crucially, that, and I quote, none of the casualties was posing a threat of causing death or serious injury, or indeed was doing anything else that could, on any view, justify their shooting. For those people who were looking for the report to use terms like murder and unlawful killing, I remind the House that these judgments are not matters for a tribunal or for us as politicians to determine. Mr. Speaker, these are shocking conclusions to read and shocking words to have to say. But, Mr. Speaker, you do not defend the British Army by defending the indefensible. We do not honour all those who've served with such distinction in keeping the peace and upholding the rule of law in Northern Ireland by hiding from the truth. So there is no point in trying to soften or equivocate what is in this report. It is clear from the Tribunal's authoritative conclusions that the events of Bloody Sunday were in no way justified. I know that some people wonder whether nearly 40 years on from an event, a Prime Minister needs to issue an apology. For someone of my generation, Bloody Sunday and the early 1970s are something we feel we have learnt about rather than lived through. But what happened should never, ever have happened. The families of those who died should not have had to live with the pain and the hurt of that day and with a lifetime of loss. Some members of our armed forces acted wrongly. The government is ultimately responsible for the conduct of the armed forces, And for that, on behalf of the government, indeed on behalf of our country, I am deeply sorry.
I stand before you today to offer an apology to former students of Indian residential schools. The treatment of children in Indian residential schools is a sad chapter in our history. Two primary objectives of the residential school system were to remove and isolate children from the influence of their home, families, traditions, and cultures, and to assimilate them into the dominant culture. These objectives were based on the assumption that Aboriginal cultures and spiritual beliefs were inferior and unequal. Indeed, some sought, as was infamously said, to kill the Indian in the child. Today, we recognize that this policy of assimilation was wrong, has caused great harm, and has no place in our country.
The Government of Canada take full responsibility for this dreadful chapter in our shared history. We heard the Prime Minister declare that this will never happen again. Finally, we heard Canada say it is sorry. Brave survivors, through the telling of their painful stories, have stripped white supremacy of its authority and legitimacy. What happened today signifies a new dawn in the relationship between us and the rest of Canada. We are, and always have been, an indispensable part of the Canadian identity. Our peoples, our history, and our present being are the essence of Canada. The attempts to erase our identities hurt us deeply, but it also hurt all Canadians and impoverished the character of this nation. We must not falter in our duty now. Emboldened by this spectacle of history, it is possible to end our racial nightmare together. The memories of residential schools sometimes cut like merciless knives at our souls. This day will help us to put that pain behind us.
Mr. Prime Minister, I have to face you to say this because it comes from the bottom of my heart. It took great courage for you to express your sorrow and apology to our people, to the Inuit, to First Nations, and to Métis. And we thank you for it very much.